Vidím, že už väčšina z nás sme naspäť na svojich miestach. A poďme pokračovať. Čaká nás teraz príspevok a vystúpenie doktorky Sue Cornbluth, autorky, profesorky klinickej psychológie a svetovej odborníčky v oblasti poradenstva pre rodiny s deťmi v kríze zo Spojených štátov amerických. Doktorka Sue bude mať prezentáciu a príspevok na tému prelomenie bariér týrania a zneužívania detí, súčasný stav týrania a zneužívania detí a nástroje, ktorými môžu profesionáli pomôcť deťom i rodičom. Naozaj mimoriadne dôležitá téma a samo ma zaujíma, ako uvidíme to, čo sme videli vlastne v príspevku doktora Vittoria Vecetyho, ako sa potom, povedzme, ochorenia, ktoré vznikajú z emočného zneužívania detí a z rozchodu rodičov prejavia aj v ostatných oblastiach života detí. Poprosím teda doktorku Sue Cornbluth, aby sa ujala slova a priestor patrí jej. Nech sa páči.
Hello, it is a great honor to be here with you today as your keynote speaker for the World Scientific Conference regarding Children in the Net, Social, Legal, and Medical Consequences of Emotional Abuse Conference of 2017. I would like to give a special thanks to the Council for Children's Rights of Slovak Republic, the sponsors, and everyone else who has been so gracious since I arrived here in Slovakia. I have made it my life's mission to work to help children who are victims of abuse become survivors. And I am here today to teach all of you how to do some of the work that I have done in my career to change child abuse victims' lives. But before we begin the presentation today, I want to take a few minutes to applaud all of you in this room, because all of you are making a difference in abused children's lives. It doesn't matter if you are a professor, a counselor, a researcher, a student in training. I am proud to stand with you in the fight to end worldwide child abuse. As I sat in the audience this morning, I was touched deeply by the stories that the young lady shared about children that had suffered abuse. These children are among millions of children throughout the world who are being abused every single second or minute of the day. What struck me most about what the girls read were three things. One, what those children wrote on their pages is reality. These children's voices need to be heard, and we need to listen to their voices. We need to validate their feelings, and we need to acknowledge that their pain exists. If we only look for solutions, and we do not put focus on the emotional consequences of abuse on a child's development, we are missing the point. We must listen. We must hear them. We must join with them in the pain that they are feeling. Why? To know for themselves that they are not alone in their healing process. In 2014, I wrote a book on how to help professionals and parents move through traumatic situations. In my book, I talk about something that is known as a corrective emotional experience. And later today, I'm going to educate you on that. But let me briefly explain to you what that is. Every child that has been abused by somebody that has taken advantage of them. And most times it's people that they know. When you're abused, your secure attachment that you had with this person is severed. The trust is gone. That does not mean that you cannot build trust again with somebody else in your life. Is it more difficult? Of course it is. But it can be done. And it can be done by all of you in this room. Because when you invest in a child that has been abused, and you listen to them, and you spend time with them, and you tell them that I believe in you, and that the abuse that happened to you is not everything about yourself, that child begins to build trust in you. And they begin to build a secure attachment again. Without having a corrective emotional experience, it is very difficult for an abused child to move through this life and have healthy, secure attachments to others. My process in doing this work always begins by telling the child that I believe in them and that I am here for them for the amount of time that I am here to spend with them. People do leave children's lives. People come and go. But I want children to know, and I encourage you to do this as well, that for the time that you spend with them, or the time that you are counseling them, or educating them, that you are fully present while you are doing this. A child is always wanting to know that somebody is paying attention to them. Remember this as yourself as a child. You wanted to know that your parents were looking at you, that they were listening to you, that they were there for you. Those are the children that thrive in this world. When that is not given to a child, they have difficulties thriving. I believe that there is not one person in this world that has not been through something that has caused pain in their lives. I'm sure everybody in this room has been through something. As human beings, we have a choice to either let these experiences consume our lives or to let them be what they are, a part of our lives. And I want you to remember that when you leave here today. Being an abused child doesn't define who a child is. It is a part of their lives. This is a message that I want people to share in the world which we speak of, where abuse and neglect takes place. There are millions of children all across the world who suffer or have suffered from abuse. Whether that be physical, sexual, emotional, or neglect. And we are going to talk about all of these today. Research tells us that due to this abuse, 80% of these children can suffer an attachment disorder as they grow up. This means that due to abusive relationships, children without proper help cannot heal and will most likely be involved in abusive relationships themselves. More importantly, children lacking secure attachments are at high risk of growing up to be parents who are incapable of establishing a secure relationship with their children. And we see that in parental alienation. In my work with high conflict divorce families, I work with many of these parents on a daily basis who do not have the tools or were not given the tools as a child to know how to learn to parent as a parent themselves today. Children who experience child abuse are at risk for many serious emotional problems. I'm sure you're aware of many of these. They include low self-esteem, lack of self-control, depression, aggression, anxiety, difficulties with trust, lack of empathy, behavioral issues, difficulty in intimate relationships, trouble with the law, and many, many more things. The participants in my research that I did for my book all suffered from some kind of abuse. I will be discussing many of the techniques that I have used to help children heal from such trauma. But in 1999, I met a very special young lady. She entered my life at the age of 16 while I was doing counseling with children that had been in foster care and were abused. She was a 16-year-old young lady who had been placed into the United States foster care because her mother was physically abusing her. Her mother also emotionally abused her and told her that she was the worst mistake she had ever had. So you can imagine the level of low self-esteem that this child had. She carried this label of low self-esteem and feeling worthless with her throughout most of her life, until our work began, which changed her life forever. From the beginning, I told her that I believed in her, and that for the time that I was in her life, I was there to listen to her, to validate her pain, and to acknowledge that she had courage within herself to be more than what her mother told her, which was a mistake. From the beginning, I was amazed by her. She had so much pain inside of her and was so scared to talk about it. But eventually, from me accepting her as just a kid, not a kid that had been beaten, not a kid that was told she was not a mistake, she began to grow. She also wrote the foreword to my book. And she tells the world that she is a survivor of abuse, not a victim anymore. She graduated from college with a degree in psychology and criminal justice, and she has given back to her community by doing counseling with kids that were just like herself. She writes this in my book, and I would like to read it to you. And as you are listening to this, I would like you to really place yourself in this young lady's shoes. Because we need to do this. We need to place ourselves into these kids' shoes, walk in their shoes through our mind to have a clear understanding of what they are going through. She writes, I want people to know that it is never too late to heal from being abused. I was a child put into the system because of the circumstances of my upbringing. Being separated from your parents stays with you forever. You do not forget your mother telling you that you are a mistake. Now I can forgive her, but I will never forget the pain and abuse she put me through. What helped me to heal from what had happened was that I had some great people that cared about me and taught me that I was more than the abuse that happened to me. I needed my story validated, and I needed to know that people saw good in me. I learned that I had a choice about my destiny. I was and am a survivor. I stand here today among all of you not to brag about how I helped this young lady. I stand here to let you know that you can also be a catalyst behind an abused child's success. It is because of my experience with this young lady that I have so much passion to help others learn how to empower children that have been abused. I never did more rewarding work in my life than work with abused children, and knowing that I was a part of their healing, and to see them go from feeling so horrible about themselves and damaged, and I hate using that word, but that's what they feel, to feeling that they are worthy of other people's love. Early in my career, I was a counselor working with abused children and neglected children in the foster care system. That later propelled me to become a leading expert in working in the field of high conflict divorce. The population that I work with today has changed, but my desire and passion to helping abused kids has not. We will discuss all this and more in my presentation with you this morning. And I hope as we're going through all of this, that you will take some of the techniques that I am talking about today with you and apply them in your work, because they do work. And I am proud to bring these to you today. You know, something I realized as we were listening to the lectures this morning is that we all know that parental alienation and abuse and all of this exists in the world. But what are we going to do to change it? How are we as a world, because this is happening all over the world, it's just here in Slovakia, it's in every country and every state in the United States. And today I'm going to give you information on how I believe that we can actually change this process. Because with the people that I'm working with every day, I'm seeing this change. So now we will begin my presentation on child abuse in the 21st century, your tools to building self-esteem in the traumatized child. And at the end of the presentation, I will be taking questions. So please, if you have them, think about them, write them down, and I'll be happy to answer anything that you would like to ask me. And as soon as I can get this working, we'll begin. There we go. Okay. There are 4 types of child abuse that we're going to talk about today. I'm sure that you are familiar with all of these. Physical abuse can be defined as any act that I believe causes pain to a child, physical pain, bodily harm. And there's a saying in the States that sticks and stones can break my bones, but names can never hurt me. But that's not always true. Because what I have learned through my work with abused children is that sticks and stones can maybe break my bones, but they heal. The mental abuse is what is more damaging. Because the mental abuse or the emotional abuse of being told that you're worthless and you don't matter cycles in your brain over and over and over and stays with you. And that, kids have told me, is much more painful than being hit by their parents or whomever is abusing them. Neglect is another type of abuse that runs rampant. Child neglect is a form of child abuse, and sometimes people say that it's not, but it is. Being neglected is absolutely child abuse. Not having what you need to survive at a basic level in this world is a form of abuse. Sexual abuse we hear about too often. And sexual abuse is extremely difficult to overcome. But with the proper help, many kids do overcome this. And we will talk about that later on. So they are the types of abuse. Now, I'm going to talk to you, I'm going to come out here because I like to move around. Can everybody hear me?
We'll give you a microphone.
Okay, I know my voice carries. Okay. Yes? Are we all right? Oh, where we go? Yeah, you can put it a little lower because my voice carries. Okay. So there are many effects of child abuse on children and teens. These are some of them up there. So let's talk about these for a little bit. Sleep issues. Children that are abused oftentimes find it very difficult to fall asleep and to wake up. And oftentimes when they wake up in the morning, they do not want to go to school. And they will complain of stomach problems or headaches. Has anybody ever seen this or heard of this in kids that have been abused? Raise your hands. All right, very good. I'm sure you have. The other things that children of abuse suffer from is behavioral issues or acting out in school. And I want to be clear about that. So a lot of times when kids act out in school, it is due to abuse that they are going through. When kids cannot pay attention in school, it's not always attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, if you're familiar with that. It's also because they could be abused, and nobody is realizing that. And so what's going on inside of their head every day, they're wondering, if I go home today, am I going to be abused? How can I get away from this? Now, if that was going through your head, it'd be very difficult to focus in school. So I want you to remember that. It's not all, behaviors come from somewhere. And they usually come from things that are happening in your life. They just don't show up. Stomach aches and headaches, I just talked about. Problems concentrating is another thing. Because the thoughts or the obsessions are going on in their mind and they can't focus on their schoolwork all the time. And when the teacher says to them, get your work done, they really can't. Because when you have something in your mind that is just there and it's ruminative, think about that for yourself. It's very difficult to focus on the task at hand. Many times, and you see this all the time, withdrawal, sadness, and irritability. Those are usually the first signs that you will see in a child that has been abused. That they are withdrawing from activities that they have been doing for a long time. Or they'll be spending a lot more time in their room alone. These are early warning signs that something is not right. And when early warning signs, and you see them, that's when you want to intervene. That's when you want to say to the child, is everything okay? Children, honestly, are looking for someone to ask them. What they're not looking for is someone to pressure them to talk. So if you say to a child, is everything okay with you? And they say, yeah. I usually say back, when I recognize that it's not, that when you're ready to talk to me, I'm here. What does that do? It shows the child that you are there as a confidant, that you are willing to listen to them. And they know that there's somebody there in their life that is there if they need it. And a lot of times they will come to you because you put that out to them. Other things that children of abuse go through, they'll become silent, they'll participate in violence. I'm sure you've seen this, even at school sometimes they'll start getting in fights because they don't know how to manage the emotions that they're going through themselves. And they can't lash out at the people that are abusing them because they are scared to do that. So instead, they lash out on other people or other kids. But their anger is coming from the person that abused them. So remember that. And also, low self-esteem. So the one issue that I found in every child that has gone through any kind of abuse is that they have low self-esteem. That is the one thing that every single child who has been abused has in common. So, with that, I believe that every child that we are working with that is abused, it is our goal to build back their self-esteem so that they can have high self-esteem and move through this world knowing that they can be successful. And I found this out by interviewing many kids that were abused. And this was the theme, that they all felt as though they were worthless. Why should they even try in life? Because the people that were caring for them either told them that they were worthless or they felt that by the way that they were treated. So I believed that in my working with them, that it was my goal to have them understand that there was more to them than the abuse that they suffered. that they could be more than the label which they placed on themselves and was placed on themselves by the act that the perpetrator did to them. And you can have a perpetrator in sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, or neglect. It's not just sexual abuse when we talk about perpetrators. So I'm going to teach you today how to increase abused children's self-esteem with the techniques that I've used to do this. But first, we need to know what self-esteem is. Self-esteem starts very early in life. And it starts with the attachment relationship a child has to their parents. And that word up there, well, it's not there. I don't know why, but I'm going to tell you what should be there. It is attunement, the term attunement. When a child has attunement with their parent, they have a connection with their parent where their needs are met on a consistent basis. So when the child cries, oftentimes the parent will come and soothe the child. And the child begins to know that every time they begin to cry, they are going to get a consistent response. However, when a child is laying in their crib for hours and hours in a soiled diaper, screaming and screaming, and nobody comes to care for them, they do not know how to soothe themselves yet. They need somebody to teach them that. And so that leads to abuse. And there is no attunement dance between the parent and the child to allow that baby and child to know that somebody is there for them, to care for them, to answer their needs. That is how children begin the process of building healthy self-esteem. So that's how parents and caregivers can promote healthy self-esteem. They can also do this later in life with their children by showing encouragement, acknowledgement, and praise. Now, praise is a very interesting word. How much praise should we show our children on a daily basis? Should we praise them for every little thing that they do? I don't think so. Because if you do that, they're going to think that there's no failure in life. Okay? And that's not true either. We learn and grow from failure. So, praising our children when they do something great or exceptional is where you want to do that. You don't want to do it every day because then it becomes meaningless. And when you praise children for doing something really well, that boosts their self-esteem. But if you do it all the time, they're just going to be like, oh, I'm the greatest person on the earth, and maybe they'll become a narcissist someday. I don't know. But that does happen sometimes. Self-esteem is an essential human need that is vital for survival and normal, healthy development. Without that, we cannot achieve anything in our life. Now, in life, sometimes we all go through dips and turns with low self-esteem or high self-esteem. That's a normal process. When you're abused, you're mostly in the low self-esteem category until somebody comes and helps you to see that you are different. Okay, so the foundation of self-esteem is established in childhood. I just kind of went over this. Through building relationships with our parents early on in our life. And letting your child know that he or she belongs, is doing well, and is contributing can help them build healthy self-esteem. Really what that means is letting your child know that somebody is there for them, that they can count on and rely on, and be consistent in their lives. Healthy self-esteem is like a child's shield. I often picture a child standing there with a shield on their, if you can picture that, a shield they're wearing. And when you have healthy self-esteem, you bounce back much quicker, and you're more resilient when you're being bullied. or when you're being teased. It hurts, don't get me wrong. I mean, nobody wants to hear that they are ugly or that they dress funny or things like that. But a child that feels good about themselves overall, it won't last as long. They'll be able to talk about it with somebody and then let it go. The child that has low self-esteem holds that so close and dear to their heart. And instead, what that child says is, that is more confirmation that I am not good. You see, I told you. But helping a child move through that is saying something to a child such as, why do you believe what they're saying to you? Look at the information. Look who's saying it. Why would they say that to you? Ask questions of a child that has low self-esteem. Because most times they'll say to you, it's because someone told me so. And my response to that is, do you believe everything that people tell you? And that's like a wake-up call to them. And then they start questioning that and thinking about it. And that says to them, well, maybe I'm not everything that everybody tells me. Ask questions. All right, so now we're going to move into what negative self-esteem causes in kids. Kids with low self-esteem can find challenges to be a source of major anxiety and frustration, because they are already telling themselves, I can't do this. So when they have a challenge, they're saying, I can't do this. But what they're really saying is, I won't, because I don't want to fail at this. See that at the bottom? This is what I believe in. Can't means won't. They don't realize that they can do something. But with the constant reinforcement of you're no good, they believe they can. So those that think poorly of themselves has a hard time finding solutions to problems. If given to self-critical thoughts, such as I'm no good or I can't do anything, they may become passive, withdrawn, and depressed. And faced with a new challenge, they'll say no. That's where you come in. Because really, they are looking for somebody to give them a different experience. They are looking for somebody to believe in them. Now, it might not be that easy in the beginning to get them to trust you, but nothing in life is easy. You have to hang in there, be patient. I mean, this takes work on your part as well. But if you do that, and if you hang in there, and if you make yourself known to this child that you are somebody that believes in them and wants to be there to help them, you will see a major difference in these children. So kids with low self-esteem may not want to try new things. They say to themselves a lot, I'm stupid, I'll never learn how to do this, or what's the point? Nobody cares about me anyway. Think about this yourself. You're more apt to do things when you have support behind you, right? Right? Raise your hand if you do more things when somebody is supporting you. Good. It's most people, I'm glad. That's important. Okay? When you don't have people backing you or believing in you, why would you try? I wouldn't. But when I have people saying, you're doing a good job, or what you've done has really helped me, or that tip you gave me yesterday really changed something, I want to do more and more and more. When you're working with an abused kid and they do one thing right, for instance, just bringing a paper somewhere without forgetting it, and you say, that's really great, you did such a good job. That's the first step in building high self-esteem. Because that child never had anybody before that told them that. They have a very low tolerance for frustration, and they tend to be overcritical and easily disappointed in themselves. That's no surprise. And the other thing that's important is kids that have low self-esteem see a temporary setback as usually permanent. So, you know, if you fail at something the first time, I'll try again, because I have really good self-esteem. So I'll keep trying and trying. A child that has been abused will not try again. They need encouragement from people to do that. And all of the stuff that we've talked about up to this point, these place kids in a higher risk of stress and mental illness, as well as real difficulty solving different problems and challenges that they occur in the world. So a lot of times when they are approached or challenged that they haven't done something as well as they could, they go right to anger. I don't blame them. Somebody has come into their world and hurt them. It could be somebody that they trust. Why shouldn't they be angry? Why shouldn't they be distrustful? So, I want you to remember this. These children see all of you as their abuser in the beginning, because you represent an adult that they could be weary of. They think in their minds many times that I shouldn't trust you, I shouldn't open up to you because you could hurt me or turn on me. So they keep it very close to themselves, inside, where they're not letting their feelings out. And that is oftentimes what leads to the mental illness, because they don't have people there to talk to. So it's your job to get in there so they can open up to you. So these are the main things that abuse children. This is just a recap before we move on to the next thing. Abused children who have low self-esteem, have low self-worth, lack of attunement and attention, lack of encouragement, no teachable moments. So let me talk about that for a second, because I think that is so important, teachable moments. Every kid, I don't care if they're abused or not, is going to mess up in this life. All right? And when they do mess up, you have a choice to make that a teachable moment for the child or put a stamp on their forehead that they failed and cannot do better. I don't believe in that approach. I believe that when a child makes a mistake, you sit down with that child and you talk to that child. And you explain to that child how they could do things differently. That's one of the problems in the world. We don't talk enough anymore because we have our cell phones where we can just text each other, okay? Talking is so important. Eye contact is so important. Because when you have eye contact with a child who's hurting, they soak that up because they know you're listening to them. There are 3 things that children who have been abused need in life. And I'm going to say this maybe 100 times today because it's that important. They need validation, they need acknowledgement, and they need acceptance. That is the 3 things that every child needs to soar in this life. Guess what? Adults need that too. Validation, acknowledgement, and acceptance. And we will go through this as we move on. All right, now I'm going to change the topic. We're still talking about abuse, but we're going to talk about emotional abuse. Emotional abuse, in my opinion, is the silent abuse. It goes on all the time behind closed doors. And many people don't know that children are being emotionally abused. But it's happening more than ever. And you don't see it, it's not on their body, but it's in here. And that's why you're seeing a lot of these behaviors that you do from children that have been abused. So, as I said in the beginning, a lot of my work now is working with divorced families who have experienced very high conflict divorce. And what happens in these situations is that the child ends up being caught in the middle. When you have a child and you're married, divorce is between the 2 adults. But that's not what's happening all across the world now. What is happening is the child, in many different instances, is being used as a weapon against the other parent. It is very sad, but it is happening every single day. And I see it and I talk to these parents and coach them and give them skills to get their children back in their own lives. There are no perfect parents in this world. There isn't. Even myself as a parenting expert, I'm not perfect. My kids will tell you that. I try to do my best, but I'm not perfect. But there are good enough parents, I believe in that are able to put their feelings aside towards their ex-spouse enough to co-parent their children. But there's a lot of these parents that can't do that. And they care more about themselves and getting their own needs met than they care for their children. And I'm not saying they're doing this on purpose. It could be their own psychological pathology as to why they're doing this. But it's wrong. And the person that's getting hurt the most in these situations is the child. Parents are getting hurt too, but the child's getting hurt the most. No child should have to choose between their parents. That's not how the nuclear family was set up. It's also not how it was set up when the nuclear family separated. Children deserve to have both parents in their lives as long as they're somewhat healthy. Let me say that. The divorce rate is very high. In the United States, it is now 53%. Worldwide, it is 63%. So you can understand how much of an epidemic this is. High conflict divorce is on the rise, but we must focus on kids first. Kids first when a divorce happens. But when anything happens to us, it begins to feel as though it's personal. It is personal when you get a divorce. There's no doubt about it. But what I have found is that the spouses that are able to let go of their anger towards the other spouse are the parents that are able to participate in shared parenting and co-parenting. The spouses that are not able to move past the pain that the other spouses cause them are not able to move forward, and they participate in taking the one thing from that parent that means the most to them. And you know what that is? The child. But the child is the one that is hurting here, as we've heard earlier this morning. So, kids are caught in the middle of their parents' divorce. I'm going to go through some of the ways that this happens. And these kids oftentimes become solidified or a mesh with the parent that is trying to hurt the other parent, which I call the targeted parent. So I want you to think about that as we go through this. So what ends up happening is the child, who really isn't angry at the other parent, takes on the parent that is emotionally abusing the child's way of thinking about the other parent. They become one. The child becomes an extension of that parent. That's how you have to think of this. Okay, so what begins to happen early on is that the child exhibits hatred and vilifies the targeted parent. So this begins by one parent often saying to the child, your mother or your father doesn't want to see you. They're more interested in going off and spending time with other people. Now, that parent, the targeted parent, may have a business meeting. They may not be off at the bar spending time with anybody else, but that's not the message that they're getting. And when they get that message 10 times in a row, they start believing it. Because they trust this parent. When you trust your parent, you're not going to think differently. So then that relationship with the targeted parent becomes severed. Telling another thing where kids are caught in the middle of the divorce. Telling the child everything about the marital relationships or reasons for the divorce. No. Children are children for a reason. Adults are adults for a reason. And adult issues need to be kept among adults. So my associate who I work with, she was a child who went through this. And her saying is what I just told you. Adults need to get their adult on and start acting as though they are adults and can work out issues between themselves without putting the child in the middle of their adult issues. A child does not need to know what is happening in court. A child does not need to know their parents' financial status, which is in the courts when it has to do with child abuse. Kids need to be kids. And when they become immersed in adult issues, that is where the trauma starts taking place. Because then they feel as though they have to choose. Now, I'm not blaming parents for doing this, because a lot of parents don't know how this is affecting their kids. They don't realize it until it's too late. But I think through education, we can put that out to the world to educate people on the fact that this can happen in that way. All right, another thing that happens is parents will resist or refuse to cooperate by not allowing the other parent access to school or medical records or extracurricular activities. So what happens is they start blocking the other parent from everything. And they're not sending them to extracurricular activities. They're not involving the other parent in things that they're doing. Or they're picking sports activities without consulting with the other parent. And it just continues and continues. And the other parent is trying to have some kind of civil relationship with this other person. But it's not happening. So that parent is being pushed aside and erased from the child's life. There is a whole movement back in the States that is called I will not be erased from my children's lives. And they fight to stay in their kids' lives through this process. Another thing to be aware of that this is going on is when a child does not give reasons for being angry at their targeted parent. Many times, the targeted parent will ask the child, "Why are you angry at me? What is going on? What did I do to hurt you?" And the child has no answer. There's no answer because from the other parent, they're being fed oftentimes lies about the other parent, so the child cannot verbalize why they are actually angry at their parent. But the child is acting out with that parent when they are with that parent, and the parent doesn't know how to deal with that. Parent talks badly about the other parent. That is what I just talked about. That should not happen in front of a child. I think you would all agree with that. The other parent is half of that child. And when you talk about that other parent in a negative way, that child is saying to themselves, "I'm half bad." That's the message that they're getting from this. And that is oftentimes not true. So why are kids emotionally traumatized from divorce? We just talked a little bit about this. But kids, so I asked kids, why are you traumatized by divorce? And here's the kids' feelings about divorce. I'm going to just share with you. What children say about their parents' divorce is the following. "I do not want to be in the middle of your divorce. You are hurting me by not getting along with my mother and father. I feel horrible inside. I don't know how to make good relationships with other people because these are the role models in front of me that I have. And all I know how to do to get my way is to yell at somebody to get what I want." Children of divorced families want to just be children. They don't even want to be called children of divorce. Figure out your stuff, they say, and then let me know. But unfortunately, that's not happening. But it needs to happen more. We must be advocates for co-parenting and shared parenting. This is what children need. This is what families need. The problem is, it's very difficult to get one party to cooperate. I know you're struggling with this when the other party doesn't want to cooperate. But I'm going to talk about that in a little bit of some things that you can do to make that happen. But that is the truth. It's very difficult. I get calls all the time. How can I co-parent with my other spouse when they don't want to co-parent at all? And that is a great question. But I'll tell you this before I get into more of the techniques for that. One party is always going to have to compromise more. One party in the relationship is going to have to swallow some of their pride. And one party is going to have to reach out to the other party that they may not want to reach out to try to build a civil relationship. Because it's not about, it's because those people that are willing to do this and reach out to the other side, even though they're so angry with them, put their kids first. And when you're dealing with a parent that is trying to separate their child from their own parent, that parent who is keeping the child their ego needs to be soothed a little bit. It needs to be soothed. Because when that happens, they are more able to give more. Because that parent that is doing this to the child is really hurting. They have their own pain. And remember what I said in the beginning, validated knowledge and acceptance. If you can look and see that that parent is hurting themselves and they don't have the coping skills within themselves to process what has been going through their mind about what their spouse has done to them, you are in the driver's seat to make an approach to a parent who is keeping your kid from you. Many kids, a lot of times I'll also get questions such as, why can't my child just break away from that other parent and come and talk to me? They know that I'm the good parent, if you want to call it the good parent. Why can't they just do that? I'll tell you why. Because they have an extreme loyalty to the parent that is trying to keep them from the other parent. You can have loyalty to people, that's good, but the loyalty in these situations causes fear in the child. The child is so afraid, if I detach myself from this parent, I may never have this parent in my life again, and this parent over here I don't have any relationship with. So it's better that I stay over here because I don't know what's over there. That is why kids cannot separate themselves from the parent that is emotionally abusing them, because they don't know what they have on the other side. So they stay there because of the fear that they have within themselves. All right. Shared parenting is the best way to parent. And shared parenting refers to a collaborative arrangement in a child custody or divorce case. Now, shared parenting is different in different countries and also in the United States. Shared parenting, however, is always the best way to go. Well, let me not say always. It's the better way to go. But shared parenting doesn't always have to be 50%, okay? It doesn't. Whatever works for a family oftentimes can be called shared parenting. Shared parenting is having both parents in your life, and you're seeing both parents, and you're having quality relationships with them. Let's say the court order comes down and it's a split 50-50. But the child's going over to the other side, and 50% of the time they're with the other parent, they're miserable. What's the purpose of that? It could be better that you have a 60-40 split. I don't know. I'm not here to determine that. I don't work in the courts. But what I'm saying is, and I believe, that every situation should be looked at in a unique way. And you figure out what is best for the child. Co-parenting is extremely important. Because the child of divorce needs to know that both parents can at least be civil with one another. It doesn't have anything to do with parents going on vacation together that are divorced or going out to dinner all the time or things like that. A civil relationship between parents, hello, goodbye, you can discuss activities, is ideal in high conflict divorce. That's what we're looking for. And here are a few tips on how to implement co-parenting in high conflict divorce situations. One that is very important is making the children your main focus. Some divorced parents are confused about this. So one thing that I would encourage, if you do see this going on in a parent and this is happening, where they're trying to remove the child from the other parent, is encourage them to deal with their own anger first. Anyone that is coming from a place of anger cannot see things clearly. And I find with the people that come to me too, I tell them this, your anger is blocking you from seeing things straight. So even the targeted parent says, sometimes, I want to destroy the other parent. And I say, hold on, wait a minute, back up, because that is not beneficial at all to this situation. What is your goal? And then they say, to have my child in my life. Well, going after the other parent and trying to destroy them is not going to get a relationship back with your child. It causes more problems and more issues and more drama. And that is what you want to avoid here. And remember, encourage these parents that adult conversations are for adults, not for children. Remember this also. Even though you may think that your child is not listening to what you are talking about, they are listening. Just because they're up in their room doesn't mean they don't hear what parents are saying in the kitchen. The next thing that is important is listening. Trying to manage disagreements with your ex through compromise, not anger. Compromise is the big thing here to create change. Now, this is not going to come from the person that is trying to remove the child. It must be initiated from the targeted parent to the other parent. For example, the parent that is being targeted can send an email or a text or have a phone call with the other parent to say, how can we work this out together? What is your suggestions about how we do this? When you ask that of the parent that is trying to remove this child from your life, they feel that they have some power because they can make suggestions about how they would like this to go. And when they start making suggestions, the parent who's on the other side needs to listen to those suggestions and find a way to compromise. This takes a lot of patience and a lot of, you have to dig deep inside yourself to do this. But that is where you will see change. You will see change by listening to the other party. You don't have to agree about everything, but you must take their suggestions into consideration, because if you don't, they are not going to talk to you anymore. They will cut you out completely. They want to be heard, they want to be acknowledged, and they want to be validated. Resist impulses. So this is something that you can talk to the parents about. Is when you get when a parent gets a nasty email or a text or a phone call from a parent, the first thing that comes up in them is that they want to lash back out right away. All right, we all want to do that when we feel as though we're not being heard. That's not a good thing to do. The better thing to do is to encourage these parents to step back. Let that go. And then respond a few hours later when you're in a much clearer place. Because when somebody's attacking you, our instincts are to attack back. But I believe, and I've seen, that when you step back, you recollect your thoughts about what is happening, you're coming from a different place. The other person is trying to egg the parent on. They want that negative response back. But when the parent starts responding differently, and they're not responding back with the same anger, things start to change. I see it every day. It doesn't happen immediately. You have to be consistent in these responses. But over time, it does change the situation. So what I like to say is hold back, kids first, your issues second. That's what I like to say to parents. All right, who is the better parent, a mom or a dad? That's not a great question, because there really isn't an answer to that. There's good moms, there's good dads, and this epidemic is not just about fathers, it's not just about mothers. It's happening on both sides. I want you to keep that in mind. Mothers are doing it, fathers are doing it. And children, however, with effective co-parenting, this is the outcome I'm going to go over with you regarding some of the things that I just shared with you. When proper co-parenting, and remember what I mean by proper co-parenting, it's not being on the same page in every single place. That does not exist in high conflict parenting. It's a civil relationship where you can talk about certain things and have agreement on it. It's not every single avenue. But when you are able to get into a co-parenting place, the children will feel secure. When kids know they are loved by both parents, they usually have better self-esteem and adjust quicker to the divorce. It takes a lot of work to have an amicable divorce. It takes even more work to co-parent when you're in a high conflict divorce. It is possible, but it takes a lot of work and dedication. It also allows these children to be better problem solvers. Children who continually see their parents working together to solve problems will go out into the world and be able to work with people more to solve problems. Not just saying, I'm doing it my way and that's it. So that teaches them a very valuable lesson. These children who come from co-parenting have high self-esteem, higher self-esteem. When your kids don't have to worry about you arguing, they can go on and live their own life and become successful in what they're doing. But if they're focusing on what's going on, or they're scared that every time they come in the house, they're hearing screaming on the phone, that is not going to make them feel very good. They have a healthy example to follow. Somebody asked me last night at dinner, isn't this kind of parenting, high conflict parenting, very damaging to a kid's relationship later on in life? Yes and no. It can be, because they're mimicking dysfunctional relationships, which they're seeing in the home. But if that relationship can change over time within the home, while these kids are growing up, they have a much better chance of having successful, intimate relationships later in life. Unfortunately, if this just continues and continues on and they get no help for it, they will struggle with intimate relationships. Your children deserve, all children deserve, to have both parents in their lives. And it begins with hopeful parenting, making the choice to co-parent today. I encourage people, all of you, to even when these parents say, I can't do this, you say, yes, you can. Because when parents that are being targeted have a lot of support behind them, and they know that somebody is there to empower them through this and give them some of the tools to do this, then they get excited because they feel that they are not helpless anymore. And when somebody feels that they're not helpless, they have hope. And hope is what empowers people to move forward in their lives. There are so many parents struggling. They don't know what to do in these situations. But there are things out there that do help. All right, let me take a drink of water here for 1 second. All right. So now we're just going to move back into general about moving abused children from negative to positive esteem, because the children that are going through high conflict divorce situations have usually lower self-esteem. So this is something that I try to apply to all children that are going through abuse. I want to acknowledge the victim in these children. These children are victims of the pain that they are going through, but I don't want to stay there. I don't want the child to stay in a victim role. I want to empower themselves to believe that they are survivors. Survivors is a much more powerful word than a victim. When you're a victim, a lot of times, you stay in that victim role and you begin to feel sorry for yourself. And when you feel sorry for yourself, you can go into a deep depression. That is not what we want for victims of abuse. We want to encourage them and tell them, as I said before, that this is a part of your life. It doesn't define every aspect of your being. Teaching the children to value themselves is very important. You want the child to identify things within themselves that give them passion or drive or hope for a better future. By doing that, they are more than the abuse. That's a good first step, because they walk around thinking they have a stamp on their forehead or a label. But let's say that they are very interested in dance or sports or something that they can excel in. That's a good thing to get them involved in, because they can gain confidence from that. This reminds me of a story back about 10 years ago, where a child who was severely abused came into a colleague's office of mine, and the child wouldn't even talk to her for weeks and weeks and weeks. But she was able to get out of him that he liked fishing. So she started to bring in magazines of fishing, and they would go through them together. And he never said a word for about 2 weeks, looking through the magazines. And then finally on the 3rd week, he said to her, "Do you like to go fishing?" And that began a bond between them. And slowly that child began to open up about what was going on in his life. It's important to take an interest in what the child likes, not to just go in and say, "Tell me what happened to you. Tell me what these terrible people did to you." That child doesn't want to talk about what happened to them. They don't know you, they don't trust you. So that's a really good technique, to bring something to the table that they are interested in, because it shows that you care. And another thing that I heard from many children that have been through abuse is, and I would get this all the time, "You don't know me. You don't know what I've been through." You're right, I don't. Tell me. Let me walk in your shoes for a little. Let me join with you. And that's another great technique that I talk about in my book. It's called joining. When you join with a child that has been abused, it's not about stepping into their shoes. It's more about saying you have empathy for them. You know what heals abusive relationships? Not sympathy, empathy. Where you're there with them, telling them, if this happened to me, I would feel very angry and sad. You know what that does? It allows them to know they are not alone. And all of us, when we're going through anything that is upsetting, we don't want to know that we want to know we're not alone in that situation. So a lot of times people get confused between giving people sympathy and showing them empathy. You can be sorry for a person. That's sympathy. When you have empathy, you are joining with them in their pain. And that is where healing starts to take place. All right, so I mentioned this at the beginning of the presentation. It's a corrective emotional experience. This is a very critical thing that abused children need. Now, I learned this through using for myself. In the work that I was doing with children that were abused early on was much different than what other people were doing. But my supervisor let me do it because I was getting results. So I got lucky. And what this was about, that I saw that many of these kids needed somebody to believe in them, invest in them, see them more than an abused child. So I used myself to do that. I invested in these children while I was with them. I got to know them. I said to them, I bet that you can do a lot more than you think you can do. Let me help you. Let me be there for you. Let me go over this test with you. Let me help you write an essay. Let me show you that there are people out there that want to build you up, not tear you down. When you come from a place where you feel that everybody wants to tear you down, you don't even believe that you can be built up. It is my job as a professional to help children build themselves up that have been abused. That is what I told myself every time I went into work. That was my mission. Because I knew if they had good self-esteem and they believed that somebody in that world was out there that believed in them, they could take that with them throughout their life. Now, I told you about the young lady at the beginning of my speech today. That young lady was 16 years old. Now she's 33. And we still keep in touch. And she just called me actually last week before I left. And she said, you go tell them your story about me. Because I still need you, Dr. Sue, she said. And I brought tears to my eyes. Because she said, you believed in me when nobody else did. And she took that with her for the rest of her life. I tell you this because if I can do it, so can you. If I can do that, you can do that. That is why I say we are vehicles of change for abused children. And you can do that through your research. You can do that through counseling. You can do it through donating. Be the catalyst to make a change in a child's life. You will not regret it because the reward that you get back from those children lasts you a lifetime. Me seeing this, she's thriving out in the world. She's a mother now. She works. She, wrote the foreword for my book. She had become successful. And am I saying that this can happen from every single child? Absolutely not. I can't say that it's possible for every single child. But many of these children that do thrive from these techniques have resiliency in them. It's an innate thing, that you can bounce back. It's somewhat innate and somewhat not. But most of them have some resiliency within themselves. And with the techniques that you're using, which I'm talking to you about, it propels the person forward, the child forward. All right. Have I talked enough yet? You want more? Here I come. All right, so we're wrapping up. But I'm not going to leave you without giving you a list of tools. But we're going to talk about, so in my research that I did with abused children, I came up with an ultimate system for increasing abused children's self-esteem. And I call it the triple empowerment system. And people are using this all over the world and the country to deal with empowering kids to build their self-esteem. And this is for professionals working in the field. So the first thing that I encourage professionals to do is embrace the topic. You can't go into any field without doing your own education first. Learning how to help an abused child feel safe again. Rebuilding a trustful, safe relationship with a child is the #1 thing you have to do from the beginning. You must embrace this. You must come into this work with that feeling. And then what happens is you start with the empathy, which we just talked about. The first step that you want to do is show these children that you see things from their perspective. If this happened to me, I would feel the same way. Really? I'm not alone? And that's what they begin to say to themselves. Then listening. Listening is very difficult for people because we all want to get our say in. And I understand that. But with an abused child, they want to be listened to. They want to know that you are fully present when they are telling you something. So look them in the eye, make eye contact, and say, I am fully here and I want to listen because I care. Then what happens is you validate their feelings. Just like I said before, if I went through this, I would feel that way. And then you acknowledge what they went through. And you acknowledge it by saying, going through the story with them. Have them share a narrative with you. A lot of times kids are not going to just verbalize. They'll do that when they're older, but when they're younger and they're abused, they're not always going to be able to say the words that way. So what you can do is have them tell a story or have them write their story out for you and give it to you. That is a lot more less threatening than just saying it to you. And then it becomes all down to accepting. Meaning they're looking to you to accept what has happened to them and still care for them. That's what acceptance means here. That even though they have been abused, and a lot of time abuse causes shame. Most times it does, but they want to know that you accept them even though this has happened to them. So you can verbalize that to them. So that's how you embrace the situation. Then you educate yourself more. You can never have too much education. So depending on what the abused child shares with you, you need to then go read or listen to videos online and get more educated on what you need to do to help this child. And as we know today, there is so much literature out there. You can read about it, take classes, check your own level of self-esteem. Now I write about this in my book a lot. And people ask me this when I'm being interviewed. They say, why did you put a section in your book about the person reading this book checking their self-esteem? And my answer is quite simple. If you don't have good self-esteem, how are you going to help somebody else increase their self-esteem? So do a self-check on yourself. To check, you may think you have great self-esteem, but when you take my test, you might not think so. So what I'm saying is you have to be in a very good place yourself and feel good about yourself to encourage a child to build healthy self-esteem. Because otherwise, what you're feeling inside often comes off to other people. And then you're in an empowering position. You have the tools, you've embraced the issues, and now you're ready to put a plan into action. That's why you can't just walk in a room and expect to change an abused child's life. In any of these situations, in divorce, in physical abuse, emotional abuse, you must have an action plan. And that's what I'm all about. I like to build strategies for people that are working with children that are going through abuse. Because if not, sometimes you're using techniques that work for this instance but don't work for that instance. So it's very important, and I encourage you to map out a plan based on what you're finding on the internet and the research that is available, and curtail it to your issue. It's very important to have a plan. So now I'm just going to wrap up with giving you really a wrap-up of what we talked about today and the tools that you can use to help children thrive. Not just survive, you want them to thrive as well. So one thing we talked about today is creating a sense of belonging with the child. When you create a sense of belonging, you make them feel included in things and help them to show them that they're not alone. Helping to build a child's self-esteem by asking him what he likes or dislikes. We talked about that. Find a passion in the child that they like and invest yourself in it. It will change the whole scenario. Keep saying your voice matters and you are important. That is so critical. That is the other most important aspect of helping a child build high self-esteem that has been abused. Give them a voice, because they didn't have a voice when they were being abused. And you need a voice to go through this world in many different instances. So really give them a voice, and you do that by acknowledging that you're listening to them and asking them questions. What do you think about this? Many times people out in the world don't ask kids what they want or what they think, and they certainly didn't ask them, do you want this, when they were being abused. Most important thing, empathy, validation, acknowledgement, and acceptance. That's my thing. That's what I really believe in. It has changed the lives of hundreds of children, so I really encourage you to focus on that. Listen, be present in their life. Look, we're all busy, and we love our cell phones. I do, but when I'm trying to talk to somebody, I need to put that cell phone down, especially with a child, and look at them in the eyes. I'm guilty of this as a parent. I see my husband shaking his head right now. But sometimes when my kids come to me and I'm looking at my phone, they say to me, Mom, put your phone down because I need your attention. So by knowing that, I'm encouraging everybody else to do that too, because it really does make a difference. And we learn from being told what we do wrong, right? Okay. So also, teach. I really believe in this. That's because I come from a background of teaching myself. But teach children that they don't have to live their lives always how they're living it. There are different alternatives to healing, and there are different ways of living your life. You don't have to be a victim of abuse. Be careful what you say. Kids are very sensitive to parents and other words. Remember to praise the child, but not all the time. And another thing, please be truthful with kids. Not on every topic. But when a child asks you, they ask, do you know when my mom's going to come back and get me? And you don't know the answer to that. Please don't tell them a story and make it up. Say, I don't know when your mom or your dad may come back, but I'll do everything I can to check on it. Kids know when you're lying, and they will pick up on it, and then the relationship that you've already built with them comes tumbling down. They've already been lied to a lot in their own life. Don't repeat that with them. That's something I learned very early on. I did not tell them, I always told them the truth. But there were other people that did not, and then they caught them, and then that whole relationship was severed. And remember too, sometimes a kid's skill level is just not there. So helping them to overcome a disappointment can really help them learn that life's not all good or bad. You know, they have a lot, kids that are abused often think in black and white terms. There's not a middle ground, because everything that has happened to them in their life is either all good or all bad. There is middle ground. You can show them that there's middle ground. For instance, I messed up on something, but then I tried harder and I got the results that I wanted. So now I don't feel as bad as I did before. Be a positive role model. If you're harsh on yourself and you're putting pressure on yourself a lot, you're not in a place to let these children grow or develop. You're putting so much pressure on yourself, that's going to come across to the child, and then that causes anxiety within them. That's why I'm all into doing self-checks with myself. Because there's days when I'm not in a great mood, and I can see sometimes that what I'm saying is not in the way that I'll usually say it, but sometimes my clients will say to me, "What's wrong with you today, Dr. Sue?" Because they know me already. And then I have to self-check and say to myself, you know what, I didn't have the best of the day, but I shouldn't be, taking it out on somebody else. Nurture yourself. Take good care of yourself. This is hard, draining work. How many of you are educators? Okay. How many of you actually counsel children? Okay. How many of you are just here? Okay. What else do some of you do?
Lawyers.
Lawyers, that's right. Students? All right, it doesn't matter. You're an array of things, but it's very difficult being a lawyer in these cases too, because you're being pulled every which way, and the client is demanding from you what they want, and you don't always know you can get it, right? Yeah. Right. And that can become very stressful. Whatever you're doing in this field of work, you must take time for yourself. You must have self-care, because you will get burnt out as well. So sometimes I drink 5 cups of coffee a day. I find that soothing to me. And it keeps me alert. But then sometimes I do crash on the coffee. But that is something that I like to do every day. Or take out a half hour and sit with my children and do something fun with them. It rejuvenates me so I can go back the next day and do my work. And let me end with this before we get to questions, because I love this quote. Your children need your presence more than your presence. Meaning, abused children need you to be present with them. Really there with them when you're talking to them. Parents that are in this horrible situation and are going through this need you to really be with them. Hear their pain, accept their pain. Buying a child a gift, which is a present, doesn't make their pain go away. It does for a little bit. But then they get bored with that present and they're left with the pain. Be there for these kids. Let them know that you care. And remember, validate, acknowledge, and accept. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here with you today. Questions? Don't be shy.
Nech sa páči, máme čas na diskusiu pred obedom.
Oh, do I need the headset? Yeah, I need the headset. What? Yeah, I know. Okay. Somebody. Oh, hello. You speak English?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay. Does it work?
No, I don't think that's on. You could try this one.
Okay.
Oh, it is?
Right.
Okay.
My question is, in somehow referring to my case, is it possible to identify emotional abuse of the children when a parent is using the child in the trial against the other parent?
Is it possible to argue that in court, is what you're saying?
Yes, in the court.
Have you found that very difficult to make that argument in court? I bet you have. That is because the term parent alienation is still not accepted worldwide as a diagnosis. So many times I work with lawyers in the States a lot because they don't know what to do in court as well. And what I encourage to show that in court is to gather evidence as the lawyer to show that there is emotional abuse going on. Meaning that there are email exchanges between the parents where it's showing that one parent is trying to remove that child or they're not cooperating. In the States, I find that judges are more open to seeing that evidence than from lawyers going into a courtroom and saying this is parental alienation. I'm hoping that that will change in the future as this topic becomes more aware across the world, and does get a formal diagnosis. But as of right now, it doesn't have a formal diagnosis, so it's not as accepted in the world. And I also think that, you know, educating more is important. But that's my opinion on it. I think it would be good for you to show the evidence that you have instead of going in there. That's my opinion.
Yeah, just
go on.
Yeah. So that's my problem. So what are symptoms that I can show to the court as evidence of this kind of abuse?
Okay, so some of the symptoms that I would focus on is that the child, you know, well, let's not get to symptoms first. First, I would note how many times the child has seen the other parent since the parenting plan has been put into effect. Then I would show that, trace the child's psychological issues since they have not seen their parents very much. For instance, make note of when the child calls the other parent. A lot of time they are yelling at the other parent, or they're cursing at the other parent, or they're saying that I don't want to see the other parent when nothing has occurred between the parent and the child. Also focus on depression, focus on being withdrawal, focus on school issues, and link it back to what is happening in this current situation. Did that help?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Yes? Okay.
Okay, fine, up here, and then we'll go back there, okay?
Okay.
A chcela by som sa spýtať, akým spôsobom sú deti...
Oh wait, I didn't hear. Who's talking now?
Akým spôsobom sú deti distribuované do vášho poradenstva? Ako funguje ten systém?
I don't hear anything on here.
Takže ešte raz, chcela by som vám veľmi pekne poďakovať za zaujímavú prednášku a chcela by som sa spýtať...
Oh, number one. Okay, we're good.
Takže tretíkrát. Ďakujem vám veľmi pekne za zaujímavú prednášku a chcela by som sa spýtať, akým spôsobom sú deti distribuované vo vašej krajine do sociálneho poradenstva. Akým spôsobom to funguje všeobecne?
Okay, thank you. I'll repeat that. Okay? Good, thank you. Okay. All right, so in my own language, the question was, what is the range of the age group that this happens in our country, in the United States, and what are the success rates? So my research was on an age group between 9 years old and 17 years old. So in the book, there are techniques for different age groups because different techniques work for different age groups. The techniques, as far as are very successful all around the country. People are using these techniques and seeing a lot of progress in all of the age groups that are suffering from child abuse, because it is new and innovative ways of connecting with these children. The feedback that I have received with what is most successful is what I talked to you about today, the empathy. The empathy is the most important thing, because that allows you a way to get into these children's lives. Now, as I said before, teenagers in general are going to be much more forthcoming verbally with information, whereas the younger kids are not going to be. So another good thing that you can use there that is successful is having these children draw pictures of feelings that they are going through. And one child that I worked with, we had a whole wall of feeling faces. And I would ask her a question, and then she would just point to the picture on the wall to describe what she was going through. So that's another good way to do this. But overall, through the age group that I interviewed, they had the three things in common. And that was that they wanted to be validated, they wanted to be listened to, and they wanted acceptance to know that they are not different. And if I could just finish up with this, I hope this helps you. When I did my early work with kids in foster care, the first thing that they would say to me is that I don't want to be called a foster child. I want to be a child. Don't label me. So I suggest that to you in any age group. Don't label these children. Look at the symptoms and treat those. Okay.
Yeah, it's my turn.
Okay. There's someone else, but I guess. Go ahead.
Microphone.
Yes? Okay.
Yeah, okay, wait, I can understand you.
I don't hear anything here.
No, I don't hear anything.
Dobrý deň, pani doktorka.
I can ask it this way, yeah?
A verím, že...
No, not yet. There's somebody else up here and then you.
Yeah? Okay.
Go ahead.
So, I do it without the microphone. You told us that we shouldn't enter children into conflicts, into the judicial part of the conflicts. I'm afraid that it's not always so possible to keep them out of this conflict.
You're right.
For example, when a child asks to a parent who has a very shrinking visitation right, asks, why can't I visit you more? Yeah?
Can you use it?
Yeah, but it doesn't work. Can I go on?
It is. Just speak up.
So when a child asks that to a parent who has very shrinking visitation rights, or even has a visitation right in a guided circumstances, then what is the honest answer?
Okay.
The honest answer could be, well, the judge did say so, but that's entering.
That's okay.
Yeah.
If you're saying we're following the court order, and this is what has to happen.
Yeah.
I agree with that. What I do not agree with is children asking questions about other things that happen in court, or what is going on between their parents, or a parent bad-mouthing one of the parents to the other child.
Of course.
That's what I'm saying,
course.
but I agree with you on that, and I did not clarify that.
It's very difficult to keep such huge conflicts, even social conflicts,
yeah.
You know, it's being...
I didn't say it was easy.
Out of the range of the children.
Yeah, it's very difficult. They're going to have questions also about what's going on in court, because they know that their parents are going to court. I encourage parents to say that's between your mother and I, or your father and I.
Then the court asks the children to go.
That's another issue when the courts ask the children to come in and testify.
Yeah, okay.
You know, I try to do everything possible not to let that happen. Yeah. But, you know, and encourage people and lawyers to keep the kids out of court, because it's putting a child in a position to choose.
Yeah, that's the courts abusing the child.
Yes.
Yeah, you agree with that?
In some cases, yes. Did I answer? Did I clarify now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, now, yes. Wait, let me put this on.
Takže dobrý deň, pani doktorka Siu. Ďakujem. Som veľmi rada, že som sa zúčastnila tohoto sedenia. Nakoľko hľadám už dlhšiu dobu odpoveď na jednu otázku. Ale žiaľ, musím vám najprv ozrejmiť jeden príbeh mladej ženy. A ten príbeh som počula vo vašom prejave, ale jedná sa o úplne inú mladú ženu. Čiže len tak zhruba vám poviem, táto mladá žena, keď mala 2 roky, zanedbaním svojej matky došla o sluch. Čiže je hluchonemá, v dnešnej modernej dobe sa hovorí nepočujúca. Tým bola rodičom odobratá a žila v detskom domove, kde bola 2-krát znásilnená pracovníkmi detského domova. S tým, že zostala nepočujúca, navštevovala školu pre nepočujúcich a tam si ju všimla jedna učiteľka, ktorá si ju zobrala do pestúnskej starostlivosti. Bola to úžasná rodina, ktorá skutočne, musím povedať, klobúk dolu, sa starala a slušne vychovala túto mladú ženu. Prišlo obdobie puberty, táto mladá žena sa veľmi uzatvorila do seba, došla domov zo školy, nejedla, uzavrela sa do izby, nerozprávala s nikým a týchto pestúnov to veľmi trápilo. Keďže táto žena došla do dospelosti, v 20 rokoch stretla mladého muža, do ktorého sa zamilovala a vlastne on otvoril jej srdce, otvoril jej myšlienky, proste ukázal jej, že sú aj dobrí, čo ju milujú. A z tohoto krásneho vzťahu sa narodilo dieťa. Krásne, zdravé dieťa, počujúce. Ale tým, že táto mladá žena bola vychovávaná u pestúnov a v detskom domove, sa dostala do takej databázy a dobre vieme, že sociálne úrady tieto deti monitorujú. Keď sa narodilo im dieťatko, narodilo sa 15. januára, matka bola 8 dní aj s otcom v nemocnici, otec bol stále pri nich. A 20. januára sociálny systém podal podnet na obavu zanedbania dieťaťa. Ale matka opustila nemocnicu až 23. Čiže nemali žiaden dôvod, prečo by malo byť dieťa odobrané, pretože sociálni pracovníci ani matku, ani dieťa ešte vôbec nevideli. Čiže ani nevedeli, nemohli posúdiť, či tam skutočne je podnet, že by mohla matka zanedbať a otec výchovu toho dieťaťa. Po prepustení z nemocnice...
I have a question. Who made the decision that the baby was going to be removed from her?
Sociálny úrad dal podnet. Stalo sa to v Norsku. Sociálny úrad dal podnet. Keď sa vrátili domov z nemocnice, sociálny úrad tam pravidelne chodil na také monitoringy, by som to nazvala. A skonštatovali, že dieťa má zlý očný kontakt s rodičmi. A na základe tohoto zlého očného kontaktu dieťa rodičom odobrali ako 2,5-mesačné bábätko. Dieťa dodnes žije u pestúnov na neznámej adrese. Rodičia majú kontakt s dieťaťom raz za 3 týždne na 1 hodinu. Presto všetko, že to dieťa je odobraté a má tak malé kontakty s rodičmi, tie kontakty prebiehajú veľmi dobre, sú na dobrej úrovni, proste mala vie cítiť, že to sú rodičia.
Is there a reunification plan?
No, prebiehajú 2 súdne konania, už boli, ktoré sme vyhrali a súd nariadil dieťa vrátiť, uznali, že dieťa bolo neprávom odobraté rodičom. Nakoľko sociálny systém sústavne sa odvoláva a dieťa nechcú vrátiť rodičom. A v tejto vašej prednáške som zaregistrovala že tieto deti majú problém so spánkom, nevedia sa zobudiť, keď spia. A toto je môj problém. Oslovila som norskú spánkovú kliniku v Osle a žiadala som ich, či je normálne, aby dieťa spalo v kuse od 7. večera do 11. obeda. Spánková klinika z Osla sa mi nevyjadrila. Povedali mi, že sa máme obrátiť na detského lekára, kde chodí dieťa. Žiaľ, my nevieme, kam chodí, pretože je to utajované rodine. Oslovila som ďalšie kliniky spánkové v Košiciach na Slovensku, vo Viedni a v Česku. Žiaľ, ešte stále mi nebolo odpovedané.
Okay, so this is a question that I would like to speak with you about after we end the conference in private.
Ja by som vás chcela poprosiť, že či by bolo možné z vašej strany sa mi písomne vyjadriť k tomu, prečo to dieťa tých 15 hodín spí.
I'll have to discuss this with you after I'm finished talking, and we can move on to the next question.
Nech sa páči, kto sa chcete opýtať ďalej.
And there's another over here, and I think I saw another one over here.
Potrebujem vedieť, že chce. Tento. Také. Musí, teraz sa vyvolá. Je vypnutý. Nie, je zapnutý. Ty máš vypnutý, ale...
Dobrý deň, Svanová.
Oh wait, I think I can hear you now.
Môžeme? Tak, áno, halo. Počuť. Nie. Áno, už.
Hold on. Oh, okay. Are you translating?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I can say it in English. Okay,
Wait,
so maybe.
she said she was waiting for you to speak.
Okay, maybe it would be. I will say it in Slovak and in English. It will be better. Asi sa viacerí z nás chceme dozvedieť odpoveď na tú otázku, ktorá odoznela chvíľku predtým, že ako tento systém funguje v Amerike organizačne a ako je to finančne zabezpečené. So I want to ask, the question was already posted, but maybe in the interpreting process change it a little bit. So we want to know how this functions by organization and financing, how it functions in US, this social working, how the children comes to the system and who pays for it.
Okay, now we're in English, I gotcha, okay. Okay, so in the United States, the system is set up differently in every state. I can talk about in my state how it works, because in every other state it's just a little bit different. We have what is called the Department of Human Services. It's in another state it's called DIFUS or whatever. And kids come into the services within the state through caseworkers that go out into the homes to monitor what is going on with these children. They do their checks once a week, every other week. It depends on how severe the abuse is. Then, if they remove a child from the home, the funding you're asking comes from the state for all of this, and it's funded down. Now, years ago, in my state, the children, after they were placed in a foster home, were in the area where they were placed, were then sent for therapy in an agency that was connected to the state in that central area or in the city where they live. Now today that has changed, and children in these foster homes that need therapy can go to any provider within their area that provides treatment for that, what they're going through. And that was designed and accepted 2 years ago because we were finding that many children who were in certain sections did not have therapists that had the same cultural background as them. They did not have as many services provided for them. So now they can choose to go where they would like to go for services. Financially, it is backed by the state. All the services are. The therapy is free. There are stipends for kids that are placed in the foster home with foster parents. It's not much money. I think it's about $300 a month per kid that they're provided from the state to keep the child going. And then the foster parents also have to contribute finances to this as well. I was involved in doing training for these foster care agencies on how to work with these children that come in there. That was paid privately by each therapy center. That is not provided by the state, and they do not provide, but they do provide, this is something I don't know if you have in your country, but they provide every foster parent with stipends for trainings that they must go to attend throughout the year, or they lose their privileges to be a foster parent. Does that happen here?
Na mikrofón.
Ak správne chápem, tie deti, o ktorých vy ste hovorili, oni boli odobraté tým rodičom.
Yes. They were taken to their parents. Somebody made a call into the Department of Human Services that they had witnessed abuse within this child's home.
Takže vlastne v detskom, takom resocializačnom asi. Okay,
or they can go into a group home. It's not always they go to a foster home, and we have levels of foster care in the States. There's therapeutic foster care, where those parents have to go through therapeutic training themselves to care for these children. And these are often the children that have very high levels of abuse that they have been through, or they have been to they've been to 5 or more foster homes.
A poskytuje sa takýto nejaký terapeutický systém aj deťom v štandardných rozvodových konaniach, kde sú deti u rodičov? Majú takúto nejakú podporu?
No, that is private. Correct. Unfortunately, no, and I think that's something that does need to be provided. Of course, they can go through their insurance to find something, but not by the state at this time. It's very unfortunate. I hope that does happen someday.
Nech sa páči, posledné 2 otázky. Tu vpredu.
Okay. I will be available throughout the day if people want to come up to me and ask questions as well. Hello.
Hello, my name is Mojtova. I'm head of Department of Social Work and Social Sciences at Konstantin Philosopher University in Nitra. And also I'm mom of 3 kids, of 3 boys.
Okay.
So I'm wondering about some sentences you said. You said that shared parenting...
She's speaking English. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. You said that shared parenting is the best. I can't agree with you on these issues because I know some teachers and some social curators and social workers and the cases of divorced children. And these cases show us that many children are traumatized with sharing parenting because of 2 homes, 2 life conditions, 2 groups of friends, new parents of their life with new rules, with their own rules. So my question is, do you think that benefits of that are bigger than risks?
I think you have to decide, and I believe I said this before, on a case-by-case basis. I think every family is unique, and it needs to be curtailed to that family in general. And I do think the shared parenting is the best. I'm not willing to say in every situation It depends on what is being presented, what is happening in that family, to determine what is best for that family in general. I think we get ourselves in a position when we say things are always a certain way, because they're not. This is not a cookie cutter situation. And every person that contacts me for help, I tell them that right off the bat. You know, they'll ask, how can I make this better? How can I make this custody equal? And I say, I don't know if that's possible. You know, I need to learn about what's going on in your situation. I do think sometimes it's beneficial for kids to remain at one residence so they don't have to switch homes or schools. I think consistency is always best and structure for the child. But if that is the case, I believe that the other parent needs to still be very much involved in the child's life. But of course, I mean, it doesn't have to be shared parenting where they're going to different schools. In fact, I think that I don't even know if you can't do that where I come from. Maybe you can do it here. I don't think that's very beneficial, because a child needs stability who's going through a divorce when there isn't stability between the parents, and school is one place in particular that can provide that stability. I hope that, okay? We're good. All right. Is there one last question?
Pani doktorka, ja by som sa chcela opýtať. Vysokokonfliktné rozvody sú veľmi vážna vec a samozrejme to dieťa je centrom vlastne toho diania a manipulujúci rodič veľmi zneužíva to dieťa. Samozrejme, netreba pochybovať o tom, že včasná intervencia s touto rodinou je veľmi dôležitý faktor. Žiaľ, u nás tie súdy, a myslím si, že aj inde vo svete, nie sú až také promptné a tento čas hrá veľmi dôležitú úlohu pre dieťa, pre rodiča, ktorý nemá ten kontakt až taký s dieťaťom a samozrejme nahráva rodičovi, ktorý s dieťaťom manipuluje. Povedali ste, že je veľmi dôležité si zbierať čo najviac dôkazov pre súd, a preto, aby ten rodič, ktorý je okratený o tento čas s dieťaťom, mohol dokázať, čo sa vlastne deje. Je to veľmi, veľmi ale náročné a žiaľ u nás je veľmi sa teda propaguje najlepší záujem dieťaťa, ale aj také participačné právo dieťaťa, teda že dieťa má právo vyjadriť sa. Samozrejme má, ale tie hranice nie sú stanovené, tak ako pri najlepšom záujme dieťaťa, ako aj pri hodnotení vlastne toho vyslovenia dieťaťa. Chcela by som poznať váš názor vlastne na túto situáciu, ako sa na ňu pozerať.
I think this is a very complicated question. I'll try to address it as well as I can. Because I am from the school of thought that a child should not be involved as a minor in determining where they are going to live and whom they are going to live with. As they get older, a lot of times they are brought into court. Even in the States, they feel as though when they become the age of 14 or older, they have an ability to say that where they are going to live. However, I still feel that they are children. And it is up to the adults to decide together through mediation, through whatever it takes, to come to a decision that is best for their child. This child depends on these parents to come to this conclusion together. I do not believe it is best for a child to come into court and share their feelings. That splits the parents in half for the child and consequently leaves the child in the middle completely. Something that I will go back to you about and to you as well in court. Another thing that I think is very important to do is show that the parent that is being manipulated, not the manipulator, the parent that is being manipulated is writing emails or texts, and I like to have this in writing, showing that they are trying to cooperate with the other parent, and they are trying to do what is best for the child, and they're not getting any acknowledgement for that. And I think that is important to present in court to show evidence that that parent, who is the targeted parent, is making all kinds of efforts and the other party is not conforming or responding to any of them. Did that answer your question? Yes? Okay, good. Okay. Thank you everybody so much. I'm enjoying all of your questions, but you also need a break, and there are more people here that are going to talk to you today. But thank you very much. I am around, and if you want to come up to me, please feel free. Thank you.
Ďakujem veľmi pekne doktorke Sue Cornbluth za jej prednášku a za zaujímavú diskusiu. Takisto všetky témy, ktoré tu boli nahodené už v príspevku doktora Vittoria Pezzettiho a doktorky Sue Cornbluth sú navzájom prepojené. Budeme mať teraz čas zhruba 3/4 hodinu rozmýšľať pri obede a diskutovať spoločne. Ja vás prosím, aby ste si urobili prestávku obednejšiu a srdečne vás pozývame na obed na tomto poschodí v reštaurácii a na poschodí o schody vyššie, o jedno poschodie vyššie. Zídeme sa v sále o 5 minút po 3:00, 14:25 znova v sále, poprosím vás, a budeme pokračovať ďalším zaujímavým programom.